Hello, welcome to section 1.3. We're going to talk about a midpoint today. So the midpoint, M of AB, is the point that separates or divides the segment into two congruent segments. Remember, we talked about congruent are two equal segments, the same length. So if M is the midpoint of AB, then the length of AM is equal to the length of MB. If M is the midpoint of AB, we're going to put A on one side, B on the other. If M is the midpoint, it has to separate into two congruent segments. So I'm going to aim to get as close to this middle as I can eyeball. And then it says if the whole thing is 6, these two have to be the same. Let's make that a better. So the whole length is 6. So that means each of these has to be 3 because 6 divided by 2 is 3. M can be called a segment bisector. So anything that bisects a segment, point, line, segment, array. When we talk about the midpoint formula, if we are given the coordinate of each of these ends, and M is right in the middle, it would just be the average. Remember when we find the average or the mean, so let's write average. Another word for average is mean. So when we add the two together and divide by how many they are. So if segment AB has the endpoints x1 and x2 on a number line, then the midpoint M of segment AB has the coordinate of x1 plus x2, all divided by 2. Remember, this is a grouping symbol, so you have to add before you divide by 2. So example 1, the temperature on a thermostat dropped from a reading of 95 to 60. So if you wanted to draw, you could draw a number line where you have 60 and 95. If we want to find the midpoint, we need to find the average of these two. So we first add them together and we'll get 115, and then we're going to divide by 2. And, we get 155. And when we take 155 divided by 2, we'll get 77.5. When you get 77.5, you can write it as a decimal or a fraction. It does not matter. It only matters if either of these are given as a fraction, your answer should be as a fraction. If they're given as decimals, your answer should be a decimal. Since they're both given as integers, it does not matter which form your answer takes. Example 2, D is the midpoint of EF. First thing you always want to do is draw. Here's an example like the other day where the points don't go alphabetical. If D is the midpoint, D is in the middle. And so that's why drawing is so important. Then it says the length of ED is 4x plus 6. The length of DF is 7x minus 9. And we want to find the length of all of these. It specifically uses the word midpoint. It did not say between like we talked about the other day. When it specifically says the word midpoint, it divides it exactly in half. So these two have to have the same value. So therefore, we can say 4x plus 6 is equal to 7x minus 9. We want to subtract 4x from both sides because we always get the variables to one side first. So we get 3x minus 9 on the right, bring down our 6. We'll add 9 to both sides. So we have 15 is equal to 3x, divide both sides by 3, and x will equal 5. Now that's not the answer. Remember, we always go back to the question. We want to find the length of ED, DF, and EF. So if we look at the length of ED is 4x plus 6. If I put a 5 in here, 4 times 5 is 20, plus 6 is 26. The length of DF, hopefully it's the same thing, but I always like to double check my work. If I put a 5 in here, I get 35. 35 minus 9 is in fact 26. If these two are not the same, then you did something wrong. And then EF, you just add the two values, 26 plus 26, or you could do 26 times 2, and you will get 52. And there is the answer. And once again, like I told you the other day, you always want to circle or box your answers so it is clearly seen. So that's the midpoint. And now we're going to go into the midpoint formula if it is on a coordinate plane. That was if it was just a segment that went horizontal or vertical. If we have something that's not quite so easy, if we have point P, which has an ordered pair, and point Q, which is another ordered pair, to find the midpoint, since there's an x-coordinate and a y-coordinate, we need to find the average of our x's and the average of our y's. So if point P has these coordinates and Q, so once again, just like we did the other day, we're going to change this. Point Q has x2, y2. Then the midpoint is going to be, we're going to find the average of our x's, so x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and the average of our y's. So here's an example. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of segment AB if A is the point 5, 12 and B is the point 4, 8. Well, the midpoint, we're going to find the average of our x's. So our x's are 5 and 4. So we'll do 5 plus 4 divided by 2. 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. You could have put 4.5. 9 halves. And then the average of our y's, 12 plus 8 divided by 2. 12 plus 8 is 20, divided by 2 is 10. So the coordinates of that midpoint are 4.5, 10. All right, example 4. M is the midpoint of segment AB. M has the coordinates 2, 9, and A has the coordinates 4, 7. Find the coordinates of B. So I'm first going to draw, because that's what I always need to do first. So I have A and B, and M is the midpoint. So we know that A has the coordinates of 4, 7. M has the coordinates of 2, 9. We want to find coordinates of B. I'm going to just call it x1, y1 for the moment. There are two ways to go about solving this, and let me go through the mathematical explanation first, and then I will go through how you can kind of reason through it in your head. We know if this is the midpoint, this 2 is the average of these two values. So I know that 2 is, anytime we see is or say is, it's equal. 2 is the average of these two. So 4 plus x divided by 2. Now I'm just going to use my algebra to solve for x. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And I will get 4 is equal to 4 plus x. Subtract 4 from both sides, and x will equal 0. So my x-coordinate is 0. I'm going to do the same thing for my y's. This 9 is the midpoint between these two. So 9 is the average of 7 and y. So to find the average, I add them together, divide by 2. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply both sides by 2. So I'll get 18 is equal to 7 plus that y. Subtract 7 from both sides, and y is going to equal 11. So my ordered pair for B is the point 0, 11. So there's the mathematical way. Personally, I do it a little different when I do it. When I look at this, I look at how I went from my x to the midpoint. From here to 2, I subtracted 2. So if this is right in the middle, I have to do the same thing to go the other way. So from here to here, I have to subtract 2 more. And 2 minus 2 is in fact that 0. So 4 minus 2 is 2. So I'm going to do the same thing here. 2 minus 2 is 0. Then for the y, let me get another color. For the y, if I go from 7 to 9, here I add 2. So then from this 9, I need to add 2 to get to my new y coordinate. You can do it either way. Either way is going to work, and it's up to you. So then we go to example 5. Find the point X on line segment AF that is 1/6 of the difference from A to F. So the first thing I need to do, let me make sure I'm on the screen. First thing we need to do is to see how long it is from A to F. We need to find the distance from A to F. We talked the other day to find the difference. The distance, it's the difference, the absolute value of the difference. So the distance, or the length of AF, is going to be the difference of -7 and 5 and the positive difference. So when I do that, -7 minus 5 is -12. Absolute value is 12. So I know that the length of AF is 12. And I want to go 1/6 the distance from A to F. So I need to know what is 1/6 of 12. Well, hopefully you remember from the past, always means to multiply. So I have 1/6 times 12, which will be 2. You can do that on your calculator if you forget how to do it, but basically you're just going to say 1 times 12 is 12, 6 times 1 is 6, 12 divided by 6 is 2. Or you could have simplified 6 goes in here once, 6 goes in here twice. You're going to get 2 that way as well. Now, so some of you are, oh yeah, we got 2. 2 is right here. You didn't finish and answer the question. It says 1/6 the distance from A to F. So if we start at A and we go 2 units towards F, we will end up right here at -5. So there is not a letter named for that point, but it is still a point on the number line. So -5 is your answer. And that is it for this lesson. Thank you.